Today's Haftorah sounds like ancient history and tomorrow's headline. It takes place in Jerusalem from Zechariah, the chapter 14, and he begins, and I shall divide the spoil in the very midst, and I will gather the nations to Jerusalem for war. Sound familiar? Sound like a lot of people are gathering in the north of Israel, in the east of Israel, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Hezbollah, all of them helped by Iran, and not to mention some some mercenaries from around the corner. They gathered at Jerusalem, who God is calling them. They think they're calling themselves because they want to support Hamas or they want to support Hezbollah. But in that day there shall neither be sunlight nor cold moonlight. There's going to be a time where the physical is overridden by the spiritual. There won't be day and it won't be night. It won't be dark and it won't be bright. It'll be some interim stage, some transitional moment. And he says that on that day he will set his feet on the Mount of Olives, and Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall split across from east to west. This is not a baby earthquake. The Mount of Olives is a very wide-based mountain now. To split a mountain that big, how does that happen? Just a tremor? Well, it happens to be that underneath the Mount of Olives, there's a fault line going all the way from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea, right underneath that mountain. So the prophet is giving us a little geology lesson as well. And one part of the mountain shall shift to the north, the other shift to the south gorge. And a huge gorge will open, and the valley in the hills shall be stopped up. For the valley of the hills shall reach only to Atzel, and it is stopped up as a result of the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. And the Lord my God with all his holy beings will come to you. Holy beings, of course, are angels. The book of reincarnation says that everything has an angel, including mountains and rivers and trees and streams. And it says if a mountain is split, it goes from having one angel to two. Each side of the mountain that splits gets a new angel. What is an angel? Angels are a life force conduit that keeps each thing the way it is, where it needs to be. Maybe it's spiritual gravity. In that day when it's neither sunlight nor moonlight, but there shall be a continuous day, only the Lord knows when, of neither day or night, and there shall be a light in the evening. So it's emphasizing to us there's going to be this transition in time, or the way we perceive it. And that's how it is when something spiritual comes down on an individual or a whole nation. There's a suspension of the laws of nature. We see this by the prophet Yeshua, the student of Moses, who stopped the sun in Givon for a whole day in order that they could get the upper hand in a war. Well, we know that if you leave the plane of this planet, you're no longer bound to the laws of the time of this planet. And if we understand the transcendental state, the state you can reach in high meditation, where you leave your body, you leave the plane of your normal parameters of perception. And there are other accounts of this type of thing. When Jonah, the prophet, was swallowed by the big fish, the Zohar says he could see all the way through the walls of the fish into the sea in all directions. He was in a transcendental state that kept him alive in that fish. Now in that day, fresh water shall flow from Jerusalem, part of it to the eastern sea and part of it to the western sea. In other words, there's going to be a new river system in Israel. From Jerusalem all the way to the Mediterranean, from Jerusalem all the way to the Dead Sea. And the water's going to flow throughout the summer and winter, and everybody knows in Israel that by summertime there's almost no rivers left. the Jordan and a little dinky flows that go down to the ocean. But this is talking about serious water. Where's it coming from? From that split in the Mount of Olives. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth, and on that day the Lord will be one, and his name will be one. What does that mean? Well, God has a reputation just like everyone else. Animals have reputations. A lion is like this, and a chicken is like this. And we have ways of collecting information in our mind about any subject, and it forms a reputation in our mind. But what is a reputation? It is a preconceived notion about other things. It's a mindset that I have about this person like this, about those people like this. You could have, the reputation of a certain race of people, millions and millions of people. You could say, oh, the Greeks are like this, and the Romans are like this, and what have you done? You've created a reputation in your mind about something else. It doesn't mean it's true or not. But God has a name. That means God has a reputation. And God's reputation is not static. It is in flux. Sometimes he is high in the human consciousness. A great God, an awesome being, created this entire universe, and he's still doing it every day. And other times we think of God, he's distant. Oh, he made the world and took a vacation. And he left us abandoned. He left us, all kinds of things we project onto God are really, of course, about our own inner state. But when it says that on that day, God will be one and his name will one, his reputation will match his essence. We will see a redemption of the human perception of God. That's what we really need. Everybody wants their mortgage paid. They can go on vacation or retirement when Mashiach comes. No, not necessarily so at all. But what we really need is this perception, a unified human perception of the greatness of God, which that unifies us. And we don't need to fight each other about all these things that are just killing our young people. Whether it's your narrative or the other narrative, people die for a narrative. And so we need this unification of the reputation and the essence of a thing. And that brings humanity in alignment with the truth of the Creator. Now, he's going to speak about further on, and in the next Haftorah of the holiday of Sukkot, he's going to tell us about the death of these nations that come against Israel. And he's going to say that they're going to be incinerated, is the only word I could think of, on the spot. They will be standing still, upright, and their eyes will burn in their sockets. You'll be able to touch them, and they'll be like dust, but standing. What does that sound like to you? In another place, the prophet says that there's going to be a cloud like a giant palm tree. What kind of cloud does that sound like to you? And it's all promised for the nations who come against Jerusalem. So every time nowadays when you hear politicians talk about Jerusalem and making Jerusalem part of a Palestinian state, they're only bringing this destruction upon themselves, because God will not split Jerusalem for a bunch of terrorist thugs. And God will not take away his name, reputation, remember, from his city, because that violates the whole structure of all the promises he's made, that he will never, ever give up Jerusalem. And so even as the war continues and as the missiles fly, and hundreds of missiles a day, it's ridiculous considering what really is accomplished. Every one of those is bringing the final redemption closer, because the people that come against Jerusalem are the ones, in the end, the prophet promises they have to bring a sacrifice to Jerusalem. And if on Sukkot, we're in the middle of Sukkot, we're here sitting in the Sukkah, They have to bring a sacrifice. Not all the nations that don't bother fighting in Jerusalem, only the ones that fight Jerusalem are going to have to bring a sacrifice for what they've done. And so, my friends, this is the time to be part of the story. Choose your sides, choose wisely, choose with your heart and your intelligence. Don't choose because what anybody else tells you, but choose what you know is true and who is right. And I trust that your truth will emerge. Emet me'eretz titzmach. The truth will emerge, will sprout from the earth. In Kabbalistic language, that means truth will come out of the physicality. The eretz is the symbol of physicality. Truth will come out of the physicality, and it cannot be hidden, ultimately. So we're going to continue in the Sukkah this week, day after day, hopefully sharing other interesting ideas. This prophecy, I've been reading it for 35 years, and every time I read it, the hair stands up on my neck. I'm like, when? What is this going on? When is happening? Friends, be connected to the Jewish people. Support them wherever they are, however you can. Because they're your link to these prophetic moments coming true and changing the face of humanity. God bless you all. Chag Sameach.